Welcome to Field of Screens podcast. Today we'll be talking about the long-awaited sequel 28 years later. This is at a theater review, so there will be spoilers. This is your warning. If you haven't seen it yet, leave now, come back later, but here we go. People have been waiting a long time for this movie, including me. So headed into the movie, I was really excited, and man, when this movie starts, the beginning, it's brutal, to say the least. It opens up with Teletubbies on TV, a bunch of little kids sitting around watching. They're hearing lots of noises, a lot of bumping, yelling, screaming. One of the kids goes by the door to look out, and in come the infected. Now, of all the zombies out there, I think 28, whether it's 28 days later, weeks later, years later, I think they're the most intimidating. I know they're not really called zombies, they're called infected, but we all know the premise. The only movie I can think that would rival these infected or zombies is probably The Sadness. That one probably tops it just because of the intention. But I mean, the way these zombies are infected are just raging out, they're throwing up blood, it's just very intimidating. They're yelling, screaming. And, we start this movie off with them just feasting on little kids. One little kid makes it out. He goes to the church to where his dad is. His dad's completely bonkers, screaming like, "Today's our day, God's calling our name." And he hides in a little grate while his father gets eaten alive, and then he becomes an infected himself. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I expected a brutal beginning. These movies are brutal just by themselves. But I mean, right from the get-go, we're getting that, and I'm like, oh man, that was a very cool cold open. I wonder if we're going to develop some story now, if it's going to go a bit slower. But the first hour does not. We have a 12-year-old boy named Spike. We have his mom who has an illness. She's not quite right in the head. She's constantly just laying in bed while Spike and his father care for her. And then we have the boy's father, played by Aaron-Taylor-Johnson. The father, he's taken Spike out to the mainland where all the infected are to get his first kill. And usually in this little village, this little island, the rules are that you have to be at least 15 or 16. But he assures them, hey, Spike is ready. Spike's ready to go. So, when they're going on this little voyage and there's these gigantic gates and there's just this path of land that goes to this gigantic mass of land. They're leaving their safe little island. I was like, I feel like it's not going to let up. And it didn't at first. I mean, like I said before, the first hour with the sound design, the creepy music it's playing, the little speech/music they played on the trailer, they had that going as they're going to the mainland. And as they're walking around the mainland looking for infected, they keep doing little flashbacks of just the infected out in the darkness, and it has a night vision camera lens on. And it's showing deer just looking around. It's doing these weird cuts and throwback to very old battles, and everything just felt very unsettling. When Spike and his father first came upon the first infected, it's this gigantic blob. There's actually two of them, but they were just all bald and gross looking and bloated. They look like how I feel after I eat Pizza Hut, just very uncomfortable, crawling around. They're eating worms. But Spike does get his first kill by shooting the very bloated infected. Now, there was two moments in the first hour that I feel were the best parts of the movie, and that's where they introduced the term alphas, which is the biggest, strongest infected, and all of them have huge schlongs. I mean, I'm not going to use any other word to describe it. And I think they said they were prosthetics, behind the scenes little information there. But the alphas, you can tell they're just, the name suits them well, I'll just say that. But they basically control the infected or the other zombies. But there's a point to where Spike and his father are being chased by all the infected with the alpha trailing. And it's playing this crazy music, and Spike and his dad are just shooting them with bow arrow while they're trying to find cover, and eventually they find a building. But that whole build-up of that chase scene, I was clenching my seat. It was awesome. It was intimidating. As I'm watching it, because I heard this film was divisive. And as I was watching that whole sequence, I was like, how is this divisive? Like, this is fantastic. And then the other part that I liked a lot is when Spike and his father, they're going back to their island. They're on that strip of land, which the strip of land gets covered whenever the sea rises. So you can only travel across it during low tide. So they're taking their chance and they start to get chased by an alpha. And that whole sequence, too, was phenomenal. And they get back to the island, and I was completely sold with the movie by this point. I was like, I don't think that this movie can be bad at all. At this point right now, it's a 6 out of 10, and it can only go up. It was probably higher than a 6 out of 10 for me. Now, my favorite character out of this whole movie might be a little surprising because he's a very conflicted character, but that is Spike's dad. I feel like they can just do a lot with that. They have this big party when Spike returns, and Spike's dad's like building him up. He was like, he shot them all, and like talking as if he's like taking down alphas. Like girls are trying to talk to Spike. Spike's drinks too much, gets sick. Spike's not really enjoying the party by that point. But then he goes out, and Spike's dad gets lured out by a girl, and he ends up going down on her, which Spike sees. And it leads to this whole dynamic to where Spike no longer trusts his father. And he's starting to come to the realization that there is something wrong with his mom. Because his mom doesn't know where she's at half the time. She doesn't know who she's talking to half the time. He knows something's wrong, and his dad's not really saying it. He's like, I don't know, man, there's no doctors around. But Spike does catch wind that there is a doctor on the mainland. And while they were on the mainland, they saw a big fire. And supposedly that's what the doctor liked to do. So Spike's like, I gotta go back. I gotta take my mom back through the mainland. Which I was like, that is insane. After everything you just been through, after all the moments you almost died, you want to take your mom, who does not know where she's at, and you are going to take her back to the mainland. Now, granted, I got into an argument with my friends on the way back from the movie, because we were talking about Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. And I was like, yeah, he was awesome, which he was in the fight scenes when he's shooting the bow arrow. But they're like, nah, dude, he sucked. Like, he's cheating on his mom, which I will say, terrible husband. He is. I won't fight that one bit. But the dude cares about his kid. Yeah, you can't deny that. Now, granted, my friends argued, well, if he truly cared for his kid, wouldn't he wait till he's 15 or 16 to take him out to the mainland? And I was like, yeah, but it's a different time. Like, it is an apocalypse. I mean, the infected are part of their everyday lives. And he's trying to get his kid out there early so he can get better at killing infected and he can thrive in the time that he lives in. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect rationale. I mean, we live in a pretty tough world in this movie. So I could definitely see if people disagree with me on that. But I do think in the upcoming movies, I think that character, the dad and the kid, I can't wait to see how that all unfolds. Because I feel like there's just a lot there they can do with. And I think Aaron Taylor Johnson acted his butt off. I think the kid who plays Spike does really well. So I'm excited to see that. Now, all the scenes that follow, they were all very good, very fantastic, but there came a certain part to where, like, I started getting annoyed with some of the decisions that was being made. One of them is, of course, the mom's, like, delusional. She doesn't know where she is. Spike lets his mom go way out up front, like, does not care. They run into a soldier, and the soldier's traveling with them, and both of them just kind of let her, like, wander, and, like, they're arguing back and forth, and he's like, where did my mom go? And you can hear screaming coming from a train, and the mom's heading that direction, and Spike's like, why would my mom do that? And he's, like, taking a sweet time, like, chasing her. She goes up on the train, and there's an infected that is pregnant. Which I was like, oh, this is going to be crazy. But what follows next annoyed me a lot. The mom gets on the train, and she goes up to the infected and puts out her hands. And the infected, like, grabs her hands and has the baby. And it almost makes, like, this, like, touching moment. I mean, I think the reason why they had that in the film is because they're trying to display that the infected are evolving and they're getting closer to humanity. I've even seen that, like, the infected on the mainland, they've been out there so long, they kind of devolved back to the very first stages of humanity, and that's how they're acting. Now they have their alphas who are leading the packs. So, like, this infected that can now have a baby, she uses the human as a guide to have the baby. Granted, she does try to attack her afterwards. But I was like, that's so dumb. Like, they have the rage virus. It's called the rage virus. And you're telling me going through labor. I've never been through labor. I never will go through labor. So if a girl's listening to this and says, like, I'm dumb and I don't know what I'm talking about, you're correct. But I'm just guessing if you're going through the pain of labor and you are infected with a rage virus, you won't hold a stranger's hand that you would typically just kill at first sight. I don't know. That was just a dumb part that didn't need to happen. And granted, I think another reason why they put that in there is they were trying to build the mom up as this like really good moral character, which I get, but still, you could have found other ways to do that. The next thing I didn't like is they were being chased by an alpha. They're almost caught, and all of a sudden the alpha gets hit with this dart, and it's the doctor they've been looking for. So this doctor can, tell what's wrong with Spike's mom and hopefully help her. And when the dart hits him, the alpha just kind of like zoops out, and the doctor walks up, and the way he talks, and everyone says this guy's a good actor. I believe it, but I just didn't really care for him in this film because he kind of just walks up like in almost a jokative voice and like, oh, he comes around all the time. I try to avoid him though, and it's like, what? Like, come on. I didn't care for his dialogue a lot, but then they go into like an emotional moment, which I feel like kind of saved his character a bit, because he checks on the mom and he tells her that he believes that it's cancer. And this next sequence just blew my mind, because he's like, yep, I think it's cancer. I don't have any machines or anything to make a reading, but that's my best guess. And he gives this speech like, sometimes it's better to die happy, die with good memories, rather than bad ones, or go through the pain. He had some saying to go with it. I think it was in another language. I'm not going to pursue it, but that was the gist of it. And like the mom and the doctor have this silent agreement when Spike isn't looking to drug Spike and then kill the mom immediately. The doctor kills her and she's okay with it. Now, granted, the dynamic between Spike and his mom, they did a good job building it up through their little adventure going through the mainland. It's insane they made it out alive. They had a ton of close calls, and they got saved by an outsider for one of them, pure luck another, the doctor another time. So there's a lot of close calls. Spike really cares for his mom, and he's all drugged out, and he's crying. He's like, Mom, no. And yet they still do it. Oh, by the way, that pregnant zombie with the baby, Spike is now carrying around that baby. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can't. And the doctor's basically just like, hey, Spike, I know you're drugged out. Hold this baby. I'm going to go kill your mom. And when he kills him, I'm like, you couldn't just give Spike a couple days. Let him stay on the campus for a bit. Relive the good times, maybe 2 days a day. I think he could have got weeks, but I know she was in bad condition, and people are like, well, you don't want to wait till her mind's gone completely. I get that. I felt like he rushed that decision immediately, and if I was Spike, I would have been ticked at him. But they did have a nice emotional moment to where when he finally kills her, burns her body, and then takes her skull, and he's like, you get to put it in a special place. Which I kind of chuckled a little bit. I would have been like, oh, thanks, a-hole, for killing my mom. You give me the privilege of putting her on your little skull tower. But he climbs up. It's a nice emotional moment. Again, that emotional moment is the one thing that redeems the doctor for me, because everything else I'm kind of just I don't like him. I don't like his decision that he made. I think he did Spike wrong. I get the reasoning, but still, what if it was a misdiagnosis? You don't know. But yeah, I'm done complaining about that. After the nice emotional moment, there was another thing that made me mad about the doctor. I'm going to rant about this doctor. So Spike stays at his little place for a day, 2, maybe a week. They hear an alpha coming, so they decide to hide in this underground bunker. Well, the underground bunker doesn't work because the alpha reach through the ground and grabs the doctor. Which, by the way, alphas love to just pull the head off of bodies. It's almost like a Mortal Kombat move. And he's about to do that to the doctor, and Spike saves him by using the dart and stabbing him. And like after that moment, the doctor looks and he's like, well, I think you and the baby should probably head back home. And I was like, what? Like, Spike, are you kidding me? You're going to send this kid back through the mainland with a newborn baby? You know, after all the close calls and like the doctor had to save him, like he's going to send him back. Like, that is an insane decision. Spike decides to start his journey back. He drops the newborn baby off at the gates of the small island, leaves a note for his father, basically telling his father that he's going to stay out on the mainland a little bit more. He wants to go out and explore, and he's not ready to return yet, but he'll return at some point. The father reads it. He's very emotional, runs out, like, just upset. Poor Aaron Taylor Johnson. But the ending, the overall ending, it is very, I've seen a lot of complaining. It wasn't spoiled for me, but I saw a lot of like subtweets like about like the ending of 28 Years Later, and I immediately like scrolled really quick because I'm like, don't spoil it for me. But the very beginning, Spike has a Power Ranger toy. And before he starts off on the big adventure, like he kind of touches it, kind of symbolizing that like he's still attached to the Power Ranger toy. And I thought at the moment, I'm like, oh, it's, that's symbolizing he's still a kid, about to adventure out to become a man. But Spike gets pursued by infected, and he comes across a dead end. And then while he's waiting for the infected to come, he just hears this guy walk up, and like the camera like pans to him, and man, it reminded me of Mugatu from Zoolander, the character that Will Ferrell played. That's like the villain. He's wearing a gigantic chain, like a turtleneck, and he's got like his little groupies with him, and they all have like blonde hair, and they all look kind of, I don't want to call them goofy, but certainly different. They're all like giggling and stuff. They look all excited, and he goes, "Say, you need some help?" And Spike's like, yes, please. And he's like, okay, guys, not yet, now. And like this guy, so it's Jimmy. You like throughout the movie, you see all this writing on different stuff. Like it says Jimmy. There's a corpse in the beginning, that had Jimmy written across its back. You see the name Jimmy everywhere, and you're like, oh man, like there's some enforcer around named Jimmy. I can't wait to see who it is. And a lot of people thought it was the actor from the first one, 28 Days Later. That was a theory going around. But no, this is Jimmy, this guy. And he sends his group. They jump down, and when they jump, they're doing like triple backflips, flying through the air. They attack the infected, and it's very much like the Power Rangers fighting putties. That's what it felt like, the vibes of the whole scene. It's very silly / goofy, especially for how this movie played out in the beginning. It was insane, and like that's how the movie ends. Now, I'll admit, I laughed during that scene. Like, I was laughing, because it caught me off guard. It was crazy. And one thing I will say, this movie, it is not afraid to shift tones. Like, it is fearless at shifting tones, which can backfire sometimes. That can get a lot of people mad. Was I furious over this ending? No. Did I feel it was very goofy for a movie that the first hour and a half was very tense and awesome and just like blew my mind at just the tension of it all? Yes. So like I'm kind of in the middle of it. Like I don't hate it, I don't love it. For me it's more of like, how is this group gonna pay off? Now granted, I had to look it up, because by the end of it I was like, I need to find out what they were thinking with that ending. Like why did they do that? Why did they go Power Rangers on us? And I guess the character named Jimmy, it's based off of a guy from Britain. I think he was very popular in British media. I think it's Jimmy Savile. And when I looked him up, he was very infamous after he died because, his public image was that he was giving to charities, doing all this stuff for the elderly and doing this bunch of things for kids in need. And then when he passed, it turned out there was like a lot of accounts to where he was abusing them, and I think maybe even sexually abusing them. seemed like a very awful guy. Someone tried to compare him to Bill Cosby, and I think this guy tops Bill Cosby by a lot, if all the accounts are true. Which it's kind of hard to do, because I think a lot of people came out against Bill Cosby. So overall, I thought the first hour and a half was one of the most tense movies I've ever seen. Maybe going all the way back to The First Omen. At least for me, The First Omen freaked me out a lot. That's why I say that. Other people might be like, what? I don't know. That movie found my Achilles heel somehow. But, before that, if I had to go before that, it was probably the most tense movie I've seen in a theater since Hereditary. It was going pretty far back. I was nervous for the characters. I was nervous for everything going on. It was fantastic. I loved the tension. I did not like the parts with the doctors. I liked the emotional moment with him. But like all the decisions he made, the tone he had when he talked, I didn't really care for it. I know they were contrasting with Spike's dad. I think that was the whole purpose of him. Like, Spike's dad was very rough and tough, and we're going to do things the hard way, and the doctor was supposed to be like this kind guy who's not afraid of death. But still, he killed Spike's mom like that the night he met him, so I don't know. I've seen the comparisons, I've seen the argument. I don't quite agree with it myself, but that's just me. I didn't like the doctor stuff. And the ending is just wild as can be. I'm surprised they did it. What it's going to come down to is, because I've heard that Jimmy and the group, they're going to be a big part of the sequel. That's what I've heard. And if that's true, and if they're based upon the guy in British media who I was just talking about, I want to see how well they can execute that. And if they execute it well, I think it's got to be in a movie with like a lot of attention. If it's silly and goofy, I think people go to see the 28 days later, 28 weeks later, 28 years later. I think they show up for like a very tense zombie/infected movie. And I don't think people are going to want to show up for a movie that seems like just really goofy, that's just kind of confusing tone-wise. These movies are allowed to be experimental. The ones have been in the past, I just don't know if it's been as much as this is. It was kind of an insane experimental with this. Another thing I will say about the ending, I forgot it. I guess a lot of people are saying that the way the people were moving, that was through Spike's eyes, since he was so obsessed with Power Rangers. That these guys were killing the infected, but in Spike's eyes, they were like heroes, like Power Rangers. So if they're a big part of the next one, Spike's going to kind of idolize them and think they're awesome, they're heroes, and then you're going to find out they're awful, terrible people. We'll see how that plays out. Again, that's another movie to be had. I'll definitely go see the next one. I'm curious what they're going to do. I think it's going to be a trilogy. Hopefully Aaron Taylor-Johnson plays a big part. I liked his character. I like him as an actor overall. He's been in awesome stuff. Nosferatu, he killed it. I've always been a fan of Kick-Ass. I don't know, I can't talk enough about Aaron Taylor-Johnson. But yeah, I think overall I'd give this movie like about an 8. If it kept about as tense as the first hour and a half, it would have been a 10. It really would have. I thought it was going to be it. I'm like, this movie's a home run. And then the doctor stuff, I was kind of like rolling my eyes. And the pregnancy stuff, I was like, what are we doing? But yeah, that's just how I felt about the film. So, if you agree or disagree with me on parts, tell me in the comments. I love to hear contrasting views, and I like hearing all the views itself. If you give this episode a like, it gets it out to other people. And if you're still listening, thank you so much. And until next time, guys.